Hi, I'm Mel. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be making strawberry cream cheese cookies. For today's recipe, we're going to start with 3/4 of a cup of butter and 4 ounces of cream cheese. Now don't worry about measuring the cream cheese too precisely. You don't need a scale. Most of the time you will buy a block of cream cheese in an 8-ounce package. So all you need to do is cut it in half. They also mark the foil wrapper in 1-ounce increments on many of the brands of cream cheese out there. So you can also use that if you want to be a little bit more accurate. Here, I just cut it in half. It's not a big deal. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a quick little cream just to get it started. And then to that, I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of white sugar. And give that a quick stir. And then I'm going to add in, I'm going to drop this down a little bit, 1 egg, no shells. And then we're going to add some lemon zest. Now this is about 3/4 of a tablespoon of lemon zest. 3/4 of a teaspoon, sorry. And I'm confusing that with my lemon juice. So I have 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. So I'll go ahead and add that in. Give it a stir. And let's get nice and incorporated. And go drop the bowl. Get a little bit off the paddle here. Sometimes things get a little clumpy. Scrape down the sides just a touch. Okay. Another quick stir. Okay. From that, we're going to add our baking powder. So that is 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder that doesn't want to go all the way in. I'm going to drop the bowl to add some flour. Now the thing with flour is I always have it go floof every time I add it in the mixer. So I'm going to add this in smaller increments so we don't have quite the same mess. Ultimately what we're using is 2 1/4 cups of flour. So I'm going to add about a cup, give it a stir. Try not to create a cloud of flour in the kitchen. Drop the bowl. Add a little more flour. A little more flour. Not making too much of a mess here, so that's always a good thing. A little bit more. One more stir here. Getting all nice and put together. And then I have the last little bit. So I just try to shake out the bowl. Just scoop it out a little bit. Now, if you go and you measure it directly from the sack of flour or your flour canister, I won't judge you. Give this one more quick stir. And I'm not mixing this on high, I'm just mixing this on the lower setting because I don't want to make it too tough. So I'm going to drop this down. I'm going to clean off the spatula, or not the spatula, the paddle with a spatula, and as you can see, it's got a little bit of flour on the bottom, so So I'm just trying to scoop that up and incorporate this. So what I'm going to do with this at this point is I'm going to put this in a bowl. I'm going to chill it in the refrigerator for about 15 minutes and then come back to it so we can shape it. So it's been 15 minutes and we have our bowl of dough ready to go. It has firmed up, but it's not too chilled. If you've put it in for longer than 15 minutes, you may want to let it set out for a few, just to take the chill off. You don't want it to be absolutely hard. So that's something to keep in mind. What I'm going to do is take a tablespoon and level this off. So I want a nice level tablespoon. You don't want a heaping tablespoon like you often use. I'm going to roll this into a ball. This is a lot like making those thumbprint cookies that you usually see around the holidays, because we're going to fill these with some strawberry jam, and we're just going to get these formed into little balls and on our cookie sheet lined with parchment paper. Now, if you use a cookie scoop, you might end up with a little bit more dough than if you use just a regular measuring spoon. So just sort of watch your size. You don't want these to be huge. And the dough for these, I really do like, because it has more than just your regular butter cookie flavor. It has a little bit of lemon tang to it, so that's really nice in the summer. I mean, it's just a nice, refreshing cookie. Kind of fruity and refreshing and really delightful. I'll just make up 9 little balls here to get this started. Now this will make a couple dozen cookies. The original recipe called for about double the amount, but personally I don't need 7 dozen cookies in my life right now. Being that I can't really go out and share with the neighbors due to quarantine, pandemic, COVID madness, you know, I'm gonna pull back a little bit and keep us with just a couple dozen. So what I'm gonna do is make a little indentation. Use your finger, kind of shape it. You want it to have a well. You don't want it to come out too far because you don't want it to leak, but you want a little indent. You can also do it with a spoon, but often I dig too deep if I'm using a spoon, so using a finger just as efficient. And we will go ahead and again press this out like you would, you know, your thumbprint cookies, if you've ever made thumbprint cookies. And those are some of my favorite holiday cookies. I've made them forever. But these are a nice little summer cookie, and they're a little different from what you normally see when you're going out and making cookies with people. You know, just, it's always nice to have something that's a variation, a little bit of a different flavor, just because we all get in the habit of making the same thing and you get tired of it. So it's nice to have something new, especially something that feels a little more seasonal, and the flavors of this make it feel, you know, a little more like summer. We're barely coming out of spring right now. We had a little resurgence of the cold weather, so I'm ready for a little bit of summer. I don't need it to be, you know, 100 degrees, but if I can get past 30 degrees at night, I would appreciate that. So I'm going to take some strawberry preserves. You can use whatever brand makes you happy. This is called using what I have in the fridge. And you're just going to fill it a little bit. You don't want it to overflow. You don't want to get too crazy, because these things will overflow and they're not as pretty. It's just an aesthetic thing. They taste perfectly fine. It's just, you know, if you're taking them for company, sometimes it's just nice to have them all good and pretty. This has sort of a chunk of strawberry in it, so that'll be a really good one. So keep filling these. Oops, getting a little too crazy here. I'm going to take that out. Put that over here. sometimes the chunks in your preserves will kind of get a little big, and you have to separate them out into more than one cookie. And that's okay. And if you're worried about, like here, there's some little smudges here and there, you can just sort of brush that off very gently. Doesn't have to be perfect. So we'll go ahead. Put that in here. See, I overshot it a little bit. We'll just touch that up. But these are fun cookies to make, especially if like you have little kids that can help you, because it's just like playing with Play-Doh. Just form little balls and make sure they don't stick the finger in all the way to the bottom of the cookie. You need to have a little bit of a bottom layer so that the jam does not come out. Okay. Last one for this batch. And what I'm going to do, put these in the oven on 350 degrees for about 15 minutes, and then we'll check to see how they turned out. We're back with our cooled cookies, and there's a few differences in these cookies. So if you look here, you see the fruit that comes from the preserves that's a little chunky in the cookie. If you were to use a jam, it's going to look a little more like this, where you might see the strawberry seeds in it and there's a little more texture to it, but it's not completely clear. If you were to use a jelly, you would have more of a clear result. So depending on what's in your pantry and what kind of texture you'd like and what kind of look you'd like, you can use a preserve or a jam or a jelly, whatever works for you. You also have a couple of options as to how to finish the cookies. Now again, I'm going to stress that these are cooled cookies. You need this filling to firm back up. You don't want it liquid, you don't want it hot to do any of these next things. So obviously you can just enjoy these as is. They're delightful. Another option that you have is to just take a little bit of powdered sugar in a fine mesh strainer and just do a little snowfall across the top of your cookie. That's also helpful if, you know, it leaked a little bit and you want to hide it a little bit. It forgives a lot of sins. If you're going to be serving these, dust them right before you serve them, so that way the powdered sugar sort of stays intact and it doesn't melt down. Another option that you have is to take some melted white chocolate. Notice it's very liquid. What you do is just take some white chocolate chips or parts of a white chocolate baking bar, put them in the microwave for about a minute at first on 30%, and then just keep stirring and do another 30 seconds, do another 30 seconds, keeping it at 30%, and it will eventually melt. It usually takes a couple of minutes. Be patient. It's worth it. You don't want to burn your chocolate by going full power. You want to treat this like you're defrosting something almost. So just go slowly and be patient, and then take a fork. And what we're going to do is drizzle. You'll note that I have parchment paper under my rack because I don't need powdered sugar and white chocolate everywhere I go. And just stir it. Do gentle strings. And if it starts to firm up on you, you can pop it back in the microwave and just sort of remelt a little bit. Depends on how many cookies you feel like decorating. And like I said, you can eat them as they are or get a little fancy. But these are a lovely little springtime, summertime treat. A little something different for you to enjoy. So thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Enjoy your cookies.